Cotton, the catalyst for war. The Civil War lasted from 1861 until 1865. There were over 618,000 casualties. The definitive difference in thought between the North and South that led to the war can be traced back to several causes. However, there is one event, when it's removed from the course of history, would have changed everything. This event is the invention of the cotton gin. Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin was the catalyst for an increase in the demand for land and slaves, which created lasting and crucial economic, political, and social differences and disagreements between the North and South, which eventually culminated with the Civil War. The landscape of the country was forever changed when the cotton gin, invented by Eli Whitney in 1793, received a patent on March 14, 1794. Upon the invention of the cotton gin, the cotton industry exploded, as did slavery. The invention of the cotton gin made processing cotton exponentially easier, and the once labor-intensive process of separating cotton fibers from its seeds was now a profitable venture. There is a direct correlation between the invention of the cotton gin and the rapid increase in demand for slave labor. According to the Eli Whitney Museum website, Whitney could not have foreseen the ways in which his invention would change society for the worse. The most significant of these was the growth of slavery. Along with the profitability of cotton came an increased demand for land and slaves. There were 6 slave states in 1790, and in 1860 there were 15. Also, by 1860, 1 out of every 3 Southerners was a slave. Before Eli Whitney's patent, there were approximately 700,000 slaves. This number surged to 3.2 million in 1850. Not only did the invention of the cotton gin increase the demand for slaves and perpetuated the peculiar institution which angered the growing abolitionist population of the North, it turned the South into a one-crop economy which created major economic differences between the North and South. While the North was based on industry, where everyone worked together, the South had a completely different economic attitude. The plantation system in the South did not foster unity of the classes and perpetuated not only the institution of slavery, but an antiquated social order. These differences in economic attitude added to the sectionalist tensions between the North and South. As plantations spread in the South and King Cotton reigned supreme, the North grew more industrial. Immigrants were drawn to the North, which held 72% of the nation's manufacturing capacity. The South did not experience as rapid of a population growth, so they lost political power. This made the South bitter and drew them even further away from the North, economically and politically. As the economic differences between the North and South became more evident, so too did the disparity between social and moral views. As slavery was growing and cotton cultivation spread westward, abolitionists were becoming more and more prominent in the North. The North realized the economy of the South was completely dependent upon slavery, and they needed to take measures to ensure that the peculiar institution did not spread over the rest of the country. The difference in opinion over slavery was the source of much debate between the North and South, and the mistrust and tension was mounting. The debate over extending slavery into new territories roared, and was a source of much conflict between the North and South. The cotton gin was the catalyst for the growth of slavery, which was the basis of all the conflicts between the North and South that led up to the Civil War. As America was expanding, so too were the disagreements over how to handle slavery in new territories and states. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 prohibited slavery in states secured from the Louisiana Purchase north of Missouri. The Missouri Compromise was later struck down by the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott case, which greatly angered the North. This was later followed by a conflict regarding what would become of the territories that the U.S. gained from Mexico. The Wilmot Proviso, proposed in 1846, attempted to ban slavery from the new lands, but it never passed, amid much debate and conflict. Created by Henry Clay, the Compromise of 1850 dealt with the issue of slavery once again, while trying to deal with the balance between slave and free states, and the respective interests of the North and South, as an attempt to ease sectionalism. Another issue that further exacerbated the growing tensions between the North and South was the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. It created 2 new territories of Kansas and Nebraska, and it disregarded the Missouri Compromise, which angered the North. The act allowed the states to use popular sovereignty to determine whether the states would be free or slave. When pro-slavery Missourians, or border ruffians, poured into Kansas in order for it to become a slave state, The result was violence. The fighting that transpired came to be known as Bleeding Kansas, and it was a precursor to the Civil War. As time went on, the issue of slavery became more polarizing, as the eyes of Northerners were opened after the publishing of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, the ruling in the Dred Scott case, John Brown's raid and his eventual killing, the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act in the Compromise of 1850. All of these things stirred up passion in the North and bitterness in the South. Deeply rooted in every political and social issue of the time was slavery. All of the conflicts that led up to the Civil War were as a direct result of slavery. The debate between the North and South could ultimately not end in compromise, because compromise cannot be reached over an institution as divisive and controversial as slavery. The cotton gin led to great economic differences between the North and South and provoked more differences in social thought, as the North continued to grow more abolitionist, while the South became more invested and eventually consumed by slavery. Sectionalist tensions increased, and the issue of slavery was the primary area of contention between the North and South. Had it not been for the invention of the cotton gin, it is plausible and more than likely that slavery would have died out on its own, but the invention of the cotton gin not only reinvigorated the institution of slavery, it reinvented the Southern economy and created an insurmountable social and political rift with the North that could not be solved through compromise. It could only be solved through war, the Civil War.